Well, here we are again. Imagine, dear viewer, that you've been going to a zoo for many years now. Imagine that you've been going to this very same zoo since you were a small child. You have fond memories of it, fond memories with family and friends, especially of the animals. Through these years, you've come to remember and know the very same animals that you've seen. They're interesting and fun, and you feel like even though you don't own them or work to care for them, all the same you've grown attached to them. You associate them with good memories. Now, as you've grown up, these very same animals that you've seen have been growing older, and the management of this zoo has, started to decline. Instead of introducing new and interesting animals, the zoo management has decided not to. Now, some of these very same animals have passed away. You feel some sadness over their passing, but they were at peace. But the zoo is starting to feel empty, and less people are showing up. But you still have the fond memories to look back on. Or at least you did. Management is deeply concerned in trying to figure out the best way to bring people back to their attractions and to make money. One day, you go back to the zoo and find that the old animal exhibits are back open. Feeling some curiosity and excitement, you go to check it out. To your utter horror, however, you discover that the zoo has taken the dead and rotting husks of its former animals and attached them to strings and rods and are puppeting them around in a poor imitation to make it look as though they're alive again. Not only are they puppeting them around in poor imitation, but they're also moving the animals' mouths, making them speak and spreading a message for an audience of modernity. A message that was never the point. And to your further disgust, there are those in the crowd that are cheering this on with excitement, joy, and enthusiasm. As you watch in horror, one of the limbs of the rotted husks falls off. You call attention to this by pointing it out and exclaiming how awful it is that the zoo is doing this. But some of those in the crowd glare you down and tell you to be quiet and that you're ruining the show and that you're a bigoted, evil Nazi. Furthermore, they tell you this wasn't made for you but for children. You look around and find that this isn't the only exhibit either that has been revived, but others as well to the same effect. Now, this may be tongue-in-cheek, but I hope you're getting my point. Thou art the man, Disney, and it needs to stop. Now, as you scratch the side of your rather clever cranium, you might be wondering, what brings me to this place? Well, the other day I was minding my own business, as I often do, listening to some music, hacking the government, scrolling through the interweb, when a commercial interrupted the song I was listening to. And because I'm too cheap to pay for YouTube Premium, I have to deal with their worthless ads. But anyways, I'm getting off the point. The cursed ad that just so happened to come on was a trailer for the new Lilo and Stitch remake. Now, in all honesty, I'd kept forgetting that this movie was even being made, but unfortunately, those happy days are now over, and the days of doom are approaching swiftly. I've actually been hearing that there are some people who are looking forward to this movie, and that makes me feel something I like to call surprised. All it makes me think of is that line from Shaggy Rogers from Boo Brothers.
Like I don't care! I don't want it!
Now, in recent days, very recent days, Disney has not bolstered anyone's faith, especially mine in the idea that they can do live-action remakes, especially in the realm of CGI. And this is something that needs to stop. How did we go from this to this? This is the stuff of nightmares. But I digress. Now, maybe the CGI won't be as bad, but all the same, this still looks fake. The point of CGI was to take something that you couldn't necessarily create by reasonable practical means and make it exist in the real world through intense realistic animation. Instead, they used it to make pigeons in Daredevil Born Again, when in Marvel's Defenders they even used real pigeons. Are you kidding me? Even Defenders could use real pigeons, but Daredevil Born Again can't? And I call it Born Again because Season 3 of Daredevil was actually Born Again. But anyways, it is no surprise that show was a mess story-wise, but also CGI-wise. But that show is not the topic of discussion here. By any and all standards, CGI should have greatly improved over the years. But it seems that at its worst, its quality is decreased, which is the most common, Or at its best, which is still a bad standard, it has remained the same. This does not make me feel immersed in the movie. But even if the CGI doesn't look as bad as that in Snow White, and that's a pretty low bar, there's still the biggest problem. We did not need this movie. Lilo and Stitch is not a movie that needs to be remade. The movie upholds well on its own today, and the only thing that this remake will do is damage the original. The original Lilo and Stitch had heart. It was full of emotion and themes of family and the importance of looking out and caring for one another. The characters were well fleshed out and were immediately established pretty solidly. Even though they were cartoons, they still felt like real characters with different and interesting personalities. The original cartoon had excellent animation with a unique style of its own. It was funny, sad, action-packed, and original. Heck, Alan Silvestri did the soundtrack, and that was fantastic. Now it seems that they are expecting the original payoffs to do the same thing for their new movie, or a repackaged movie. You may have created this, Disney, but you don't get to copy it and use the same payoffs. It doesn't work that way. You can't just keep copying what worked well and send it out expecting it to do the same thing. The original was fine just the way it was. It didn't need a remake. Lilo and Stitch was one of my favorite Disney movies as a kid. It had a special place in my heart. I especially found myself empathizing with Stitch's character and not having a real family and being, essentially, adopted. Being told that he was only made to be for destruction and eventually seeing that he himself needed to change and that he could change. He could be more. He could be a member of a family. Now, on the very anti-family side, there's a rumor surrounding the movie that two of the titular characters, Jumba and Pleakley, the two aliens seeking to capture Stitch, will be disguised as a gay couple. And in the original, Jumba and Pleakley disguised themselves as a married couple. The trailer has essentially confirmed this by showing that Pleakley is no longer disguising himself as a woman, but a man. If this is true, it's disgusting. Disney should not be injecting this type of behavior, especially in a kids' movie. But they've already tried that with Lightyear, and we saw what happened there. But again, this was just a rumor, and I have no idea if they will do this, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did. It may be surprising to hear, but at one point in my life, I did actually have some interest in Disney doing live-action remakes. And there were very few things that I would have actually wanted that with. One of those was with the movie Atlantis: The Lost Empire. If written properly and with special care taken, it could even be a really interesting concept for a live-action TV show. There was so much in that movie that I would have loved to see developed further, but the movie was perfect and amazing the way it was. But it left me wanting more. Now I no longer have any interest in such a thing, and I hope never to see that. But I would be incredibly surprised if Disney didn't try to strip mine it like they've done with all of their other movies. The only thing I am interested to see from Disney is their collapse. Disney used to be able to put out creative, interesting stories that were timeless. Stories where you could see character growth and development through actual good writing. But just as my 86-year-old grandfather with dementia would say, "Is that you, Jeffrey?" Oh wait, wrong line. Who are you? This company is completely unrecognizable from what it used to be. You can no longer tell that it's the family-friendly House of Mouse, but more like a brainwashing CGI factory that wants to destroy all nice and interesting stories. If remakes were the sole focus of Disney, they would never have stopped with their original cartoons, such as their first movie, Snow White. What if year after year they just kept making the same movie over and over again? What if year after year they just kept remaking Snow White over and over again? Well, that sounds terrible, you say. It sounds boring and unimaginative. Why, yes! Yes, it is! And that's exactly what they're doing now. We've already seen what a disaster the new Snow White movie is. Did you see the new Snow White, you may ask? No, I didn't. I didn't need to see it. Everyone knew what a colossal failure it would be. And besides, there are other YouTubers out there like Drinker, Mahler, and Gary that I watch that I know have good and sound coverage on it. Disney isn't putting out anything that's interesting and creative in good ways, and many people are now seeing that. They just want to keep churning out remakes, sequels, and reboots. There are very few things that remakes actually work well with. For instance, certain video games. Dead Space is one of my favorite IPs, and its relatively recent remake was absolutely spectacular. I find it incredibly disappointing that EA isn't making or focusing on making a second or even improved third and a fourth. That's the sort of remake myself and other people would like to see. But just as that scene in The Simpsons goes,
This is why we're getting killed in the marketplace. Instead of listening to what people want, you're telling them what they want.
ah, so true. Such true words. This type of behavior is only going to continue to lead to decline on Disney's part, and they're going to continue losing money, which is fine by me. Maybe one day they'll get the point, but like the Titanic, I think that time will come too late. They've seen the iceberg and went full steam ahead. The only feelings this new, movie evokes is feelings of mourning and, well, apathy. In the words of Fringy, the conclusion is, there is actually no reason to hope for anything. But I think right around here is where we're going to be wrapping things up. Once again, I do appreciate your watching my video. If you'd like, feel free to comment below on what you thought and in what ways I can improve any future videos. But anyways, good day to you and thanks for watching.